Welcome to DeNiche. In today's episode, I sat down with Carla and brought her down to my level. We talk about Android, iOS, Apple's unwillingness to adopt modern standards, and Google's seemingly persistent inability to capture the attention of the average consumer. This is DeNiche, where we cultivate the bridge between people and technology. What's up, all you nerdy, dirty geeks? I'm Peyton Guy, the host of today's podcast, DeNiche, and I have Carla Stiles here as my co-host.
Howdy, y'all.
How are you doing today?
We're going to talk about nerds.
We're going to talk about nerd
geeks.
stuff today. So, you are an Apple person, right? You have an iPhone.
Absolutely.
You do. So, how do you feel about the whole iMessage thing?
I have no idea.
You have no idea?
No.
So, whenever you send a message to an iOS user, they have a little blue bubble.
I don't care.
You don't care?
I don't even care about color.
Really?
No.
So, is that a generational thing, you think?
I think it is.
Okay.
I don't think it even matters.
Interesting.
And to be honest with you, I mean, a lot of us, we were against texting back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
We were lucky to even get a beeper.
Right. Phone calls only, or in
well,
person.
it was like you thought you were the schnizzle when it came to getting a beeper. You were like, oh my gosh, I'm important now.
Right.
And so that sucker went off. You were like, oh my gosh, I got to run to get the phone because I'm important. I need to make a phone call.
Doctors still use beepers. Did you know that?
Well, of course, because they're important.
Yeah. Only important people ever use beepers.
Well, because, it's like robots. When they hear the sound, they keep going.
Right, exactly. So this has been kind of an interesting topic among the tech community recently.
Is it really an interesting topic?
Well, I certainly would think so.
Okay. You go ahead with your topic then.
Thank you. I appreciate that. The belittling is very much appreciated there.
You're welcome.
So Android, or I guess I should say Google, recently released a message to Apple that kind of outlines the bullying that goes on between the green bubble versus blue bubble discussion.
Is it that important that Google has to send out a message to Apple?
Well, so there's actually a little bit more to it than that. So there's it's more of a subconscious thing than an active thing. So Apple actually... whenever a green message gets sent, whenever an Android phone sends a text message to a Apple phone, the actual message actually breaks Apple's own design standards. So the contrast between the text and the color in the background of the text message is it breaks their standards for visibility. So it's inaccessible to users with certain vision impairments and things like that.
So my aha moment is like Google's trying to make the standards in their way versus Apple.
Right. So it's more of like pushing more modern standards onto the iOS platform. So Android uses something that's called RCS, which is a new message standard. Apple is still using SMS. So RCS stands for Rich Text Communication or Rich Communications Standard, something like that. Basically what it is it's a more modern form of messaging. So you have read receipts, you have typing receipts, it's able to send more data, it's end-to-end encrypted, so it's safer. And Apple has basically refused to adopt this practice because it hurts their sales, basically.
Okay, so for those out there, Google is mostly on the platform from Android, right?
Right.
So that platform is set up to specify specific for the Google end user versus the Apple user, right?
So, yeah, basically what we have are two environments that are kind of locked into each other, and the only way that you can communicate...
So it's like the battle...
Kind of
text messaging.
Almost. So you have these two environments that are separate from each other, and the only way that they're able to communicate with each other, at least natively, is through a really, really old standard called SMS and MMS.
Right.
Which is basically what we used for talking back in the day when we had flip phones. So, I mean, these standards...
Did you ever use a flip phone
I
and have
did.
to do text messaging?
Yeah, I had a flip phone in
Did
high
you
school.
realize, like, you had to sit there and go A, B, B,
Yeah.
C, C to get to the
Oh, yeah.
letter?
I was able to do it without looking at the phone.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
He was like, you just listen to the sound?
I just had the letters kind of memorized, so it had little dots on it so you could tell. Like,
That's why
where
we
it
hated
was.
text messaging back then, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Well, see, now text messaging, especially in the United States, is I mean, really, really popular. It's about as popular as it's ever been.
But don't you think it's kind of broken language, too, at the same time? You know, we're not really finishing our sentences. They're kind of very small jargon of information.
It's certainly informal, but I mean, I don't think anybody's ever made the claim that text messages had to be formal.
But you don't think that in some ways that text messaging has become the way we're communicating now versus just picking up the phone and actually talking to somebody?
Yeah. I mean, text messaging is just kind of the way that I like tell somebody that this is something that you should know, but it doesn't have to be addressed right now, or I don't have to talk to you immediately right now. I don't want to take up any more of your time than is absolutely necessary. That's kind of how I view a text message.
But, you know, some people get offended if you don't answer their text messages right then and there, right?
Yeah, I'm not that kind of person. I mean, some people are like that, but you're always going to have people that kind of adopt standards incorrectly, I think.
And, you know, that's the thing about it is like text messaging can almost be in an informal aspect, right, too?
Right.
Because people have full-blown conversations with each other, you know, and I'm just like, well, just pick up the phone and actually talk to each other.
Yeah.
Because I think the personality is misunderstood when you're texting, messaging back and forth, you know?
Yeah. I think whenever I don't really like text people, you know, back and forth like I used to, like in high school. High school was really popular, or at least it was what we did all the time. Was just
So the green bubble versus the blue bubble. So who's blue bubble?
well, the blue bubble would be an iMessage, so that's between Apple devices.
Okay, and then the green bubble is
That's what it looks like on an iOS device when an Android texts an iPhone.
And so how is that? Why is that the peer pressure of the young generation right now?
So kids that have iPhones, or I guess, you know, people that have iPhones, are able to communicate amongst each other in what appears to be a more modern form of communication. So you have more seamless group texts. You have read receipts, meaning you can tell whenever people read your messages. You have all kinds of different like features that are built in to that messaging standard. So, I mean, you'll notice whenever you see a message that's blue, or if you send a video to somebody that has an iPhone, the video is going to be a higher quality than if you were to send it to an Android. Android has what is effectively something very similar, but it only works right now from one Android device to another Android device. And I just want to have a side note for those of you that have Android devices. The way that you can achieve this is by downloading Google Messages. It's the default text messaging app now. But if do yourself a favor and download that Google Messages app.
So that makes things a little bit easier for you?
Yes, absolutely.
So that you can communicate with either the Android or the Apple?
Right. Well, right now, RCS only works between Android devices. So again, it's basically iMessage versus Android. It's almost like this sort of battle in between these environments. So what Google is trying to get Apple to do is actually adopt the standard that Google has created. So instead of what a lot of people wanted was for Apple to create an iMessage service on Google phones. And I think the possibility of that happening is basically not. So what Google did is they created their own standard and kind of integrated it into their own systems, and then allowed Apple to have that capability. But Apple is not doing that because they want to keep the communication between Android users and iOS users very, very poor, so that people can swap over to iPhone and people can stay on iPhone instead of swapping over to Android.
So in some ways, though, in some ways it kind of is vice versa, though. In some ways that, you know, Google's trying to set the standards that Apple has to follow. Right. And so they're saying, give up your Apple phone to go get an Android.
Well, not necessarily, because you can still have an iPhone. But what Google wants is for Apple to adopt this standard so that the communication between the two devices are standardized, so it's easier.
I actually want to tell you, I had no idea this was a battle.
Really?
Yeah, I had no idea. When you brought up the subject of blue versus green, I was literally just dumbfounded because I had no idea that was so important.
A lot of people don't even know that Android has their own, I say competitor in air quotes, to iMessage. A lot of people didn't even know that Android has the ability to, have end-to-end encryption or to have a higher level of security and data transmission between devices.
So you're saying your Android's better than my iPhone?
Well, that's a totally different conversation.
So now so that's all. So now we're having the battle of like whose phone is better?
No, not necessarily. It's more of just I think everybody would like to see RCS implemented on Apple. There's almost no downside from a consumer perspective.
Well, that's the thing about it. A lot of times that we don't know until we know. And the thing is that when we're trying to impress, we've got certain devices that we're using, we're trying to move into the newest, changes in the industry. So my thing is this, is it that important to really have that battle? Conforming to that, I guess, would be, where's the happy medium?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, the happy medium, I guess, would be probably Apple adopting RCS, because I don't see iMessage coming to Android at any point. But Google didn't actually create RCS. They're just the only people to implement it in a usable way. So the only thing that I can really see happening is again Apple adopting RCS, which they don't seem to be in any kind of rush to do.
What was the thing you brought up about the fact that if you something about swiping to the left on Tinder, what was all that about?
Yeah, so there are some studies out there that show that if you match with somebody on Tinder and then you end up text messaging with them or texting with them, if you're an iOS user, you are less likely to go on a date if that little text message shows up as green.
I would like to know where you get your nerd statistics from.
I can't remember where the exact article is from.
So you found this in an article, and this was a debate that if you get a certain color bubble, that you may or may not get approved.
Yeah. So this may seem like crazy talk to you because of your you're not with the.
Hold on. So you're about to call me old.
No, I'm calling you older than I am.
Older. What's important to you may not be as important to me.
Exactly. You're worried about taxes and stuff.
I'm worried about breathing the next day.
Right.
Am I awake? Yes.
Yeah, exactly. As long as you take your medicine, you're fine.
You think I'm on meds now? That's great. You are now fired from the show.
You're firing me from my own show. Yes, that's disappointing. So, so there's this conversation that often occurs between. I don't know whether it's particularly reserved to one gender, but people will just say, "Hey, this person texted me, and their message showed up green. They're an inferior person because they can't afford an iPhone or they can't."
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was going to be such a. Color coding is now going to be a subject of bullying.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's weird.
Let me think less of you because you're not using the color green.
And that's kind of how Apple wants it to seem, right? They want it to seem
So
really...
I'm superior over you is what you're saying. Okay, thank you.
Not at all. I'm saying, well, from a society standpoint, absolutely, yes. Yeah, you are absolutely more superior to me because you have an iPhone.
Thank you.
Right?
I appreciate it.
Well, you're welcome. Yeah.
Respect.
So, so that's what Apple kind of wants it to seem.
So you need to be an Apple user, is that what you're saying?
Well, what I'm saying is that Apple wants it to be that way.
Oh, okay.
They want it to seem really trivial. They want you to be like...
if you think about it, when you started out in the World Wide Web is what we used to call it back in the day, because we didn't call it websites, we didn't call it, online marketing.
Right.
It was just... World Wide Web. And when you think about the transition and how marketing has started from the day it started till now, those transitions went so fast and things have moved so fast. And the domination of that was the standards were set when Google came out. When we started doing website development, it was done in a way where we didn't follow any sort of formula. Now, we developed Scratch because we wrote code.
Right.
But when we started developing and started understanding how the websites worked, we figured out ways to do blacklisting, whitelisting. There's certain things that we kind of fell into in that aspect of like, but Google came out and they set the standards and they forced them on us. Like, and they were good quality things that we had to do, but we had to follow those standards. We didn't really have choices when they first came out.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's just kind of an interesting deal because Apple has this environment. It's the Apple environment. You have your iCloud, you have your Mac computer, you have your iMessage, all of this, iTunes.
But you got to remember back in the time let me go back to that. Apple, and there was a big fight. I remember if you remember this, but back in those days, whereas Microsoft products actually had to fight to get their products out there in front of Apple, right? Because when Apple put out their product, it was only their Apple products,
right?
And so the people didn't have the choice, and so you could see, that aspect of those changes happening during that time.
So you're saying historically, Apple has always had a problem adopting other standards?
Well, they had certain standards. I mean, I think that for us, it was like we had to follow those standards. You know what I mean? But but everybody, one always. It's like it's a cycle of domination of like who's going to make the requirements when it comes to devices and softwares and things like that. And so to honestly say it kind of comes in cycles because it could be Apple making Google follow certain requirements too. So it depends on who's got the loudest voice.
Yeah, that's true. And right now, 100% Apple has the loudest voice. Like I was saying before, again, Apple wants it to seem super trivial. They want it to seem like, people are saying, you're just arguing over a color. Well, maybe not necessarily because end-to-end encryption is, probably the most important aspect that we're talking about right now. Apple is all about security. And all about like the importance of encryption and making sure that your information stays secure. RCS has that capabilities. And Apple's current standard for communicating between Apple and Android devices is not secure.
Well, I can see that point, and because you're in the cybersecurity community, on the nerd side of things, that's got to be important. Now we have to move. Even though we say a color is a color, we have to look at the security of how things are being handled as far as transferring data between phone to phone, or from computer to computer. And when we look at that security, we have to understand that that's definitely an important thing now.
Right.
And it's going to get more and more where we have to look at those things and how are we protecting our data.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I just did right now is I sent you a message between you and me. Again, you have an iPhone, I have an Android. I sent you a video, and I want you to take a look at the video and kind of get an idea of what that video looks like. It's still sending, so it'll take
I was going to say I haven't received it yet. You must be blocked.
Yeah, Is it
because I fired you?
That's it. Yeah, you have it automatically set there. How many times have I been blocked? I guess it must be forever.
Actually, who knows? I've probably been blocking you on purpose.
Right, exactly.
No message from Peyton.
So and so you'll see basically what the quality difference is.
Are you saying it's pixelated?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It'll show up here in a second. I'm not sure why it's taken a while, but I guess it's probably because the video is a little bit long. I probably could have picked a better one. But basically you have this, again, this standard that is very ancient. MMS and SMS are, their data limits are stuck in the olden days.
Well, think about it. We're trying to figure out a way to communicate faster and faster these days. And, nothing against text messaging, really nothing against about chatting. Information is coming at us at so many different speeds, right? Different ways. And we have to decipher that, especially when you're maintaining and, being responsible for client information that comes in.
Right. You
got to be able to get it in the best way. So you've got your chat programs now that are definitely dominating the platforms now, and that everything that's coming through like Facebook and Instagram and all those social media platforms. And now we've got text messaging battling each other.
Yep. So you have it's this war between messaging services, and right now the United States is just losing that battle. In other words, in other countries, they all use WhatsApp, which is
well, that's very popular here too, but I don't think it's taken off as much.
It's not taken off as much, and the reasoning is because in the United States, SMS is cheap. Getting a phone plan is cheap, and communicating between the United States, all these different locations, it's very cheap.
Well, you could integrate that very easily through your Facebook, but are you using WhatsApp now?
I use WhatsApp when I am out of the country. I don't use WhatsApp. I mean, none of my friends use WhatsApp to communicate. They all use text messaging and Snapchat and all that stuff.
So I think that it's the trend of getting people on those platforms. The more we're introducing them, the more we're talking about them. I think that transition happens. Like back in the day, we didn't really want to do text messaging because we didn't understand it at the time. And all the younger kids that I would say young, but I was young at the time too. But I still was not text messaging because I didn't understand it.
Right.
So, and as soon as I figured it out, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. I don't have to talk to you.
Right.
I can just send a message to you now. And things were just wonderful. So the interface was less and less. And now I kind of miss the conversations. I miss the communications when it comes to certain things. So, I mean, that's what I'm saying is that if we talk more about WhatsApp, because WhatsApp is being more and more putting in our faces, I think there's going to be that transition happening.
Yeah, there could be for sure. I think that the only problem with WhatsApp and all those other standards, so I actually ended up sending you a shorter video there, but you can kind of take a look at it and you can see, put it in full screen there. You see, don't have light now. So you can see, so just kind of tell me what the video looks like in full screen. You see that quality.
Is this you?
That's me. Yeah, that was me.
You were chewing on a straw,
yeah.
And you're making funny faces. So, thank you.
That was a video a friend took of me and sent it to me.
I mean, it's a little blurry.
It is blurry, right? And you can kind of, if you see the original.
It looks like you were choking on the straw.
I did. I actually ended up choking on that straw. But
let's talk about this. Let's go in this route. Did you see? I'm sorry, but I know y'all cannot see his face, but it was. Don't try this at home.
I'm a master of facial expressions.
The master of facial expressions. Do not chew on straws.
Right.
Videotaping at the same time.
The problem with adopting WhatsApp worldwide is, or just any of these standards worldwide, or like Snapchat or Facebook Messenger is another popular one, is you're confining yourself to a singular company's service.
Yeah.
So, like, WhatsApp is owned by Facebook.
Yeah,
like, do you
of course.
really want your messages to be owned by Facebook?
And I think that might be the hesitation. I think a lot of people, it's trust.
Right.
I think it's all about the trust value.
Yes.
Like, can I really trust these programs that I'm sending my information through?
Yes.
But look, here's the thing. The people share way too much anyways already on Facebook and all these social media platforms. So what's one more app? Right. What's one more app? Because we are already storing our data. We're already telling our age and what school we go to because we're complete. Yeah. We don't think about the things that we're sharing already.
Right. Well, these are private conversations, which is a little bit different to me because you're instead of posting something on Facebook.
Gotcha.
Like, these are conversations between you and me. Or
is that one of these data centers are getting bigger and bigger?
Data centers are getting bigger and bigger for tons of different reasons. I mean, there's the amount of data that's being
could you imagine some of the data centers are like storing stuff that's just so stupid that you're like we're wasting our space.
But the stupid stuff is where the money is. So to them, it's not stupid,
Well, I mean, I call it stupid stuff. It's they're commercializing it because the stupid stuff makes money, right?
Exactly.
We understand that.
You think about the content that does well on TikTok. It's like no. I don't think a singular popular video on TikTok that gets over 4 million views or whatever is doing anything great for the world, really. I mean, they're great.
But we should do TikTok for business.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Well, I think that's because it's, and we're getting off on the topic, but when you're talking about social media platforms and we're integrating that into these programs that are being monitored, especially when it comes to chats and text messaging, I think there is some hesitation on our part because we don't know what's being stored.
Yes,
we already know we can't trust these platforms, or we think we can, but we're hesitated.
And so that's what the beauty of iMessage and RCS both. I mean, there's a solidarity between these two standards. They're both secure. They're end-to-end encrypted, and Google didn't develop RCS. They just happen to be providing the service.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, Facebook and messaging was all in one, and now they split it up.
Right. The information that's stored is not stored on a server. It's stored on your phone. So instead of it being uploaded somewhere that can be accessed by, some rogue IT person, it's end-to-end encrypted. So even in transit, they can't see it. But instead of it being like stored on a server, it's on your phone. So the only person that can view that information is you.
Right.
So the thing that the entire tech community is trying to push right now is Apple, please implement RCS into your phones, and everybody with an Android, implement RCS into your phones too. Download Google Messages. It's way more secure. It's a more.
So you're saying I should try it?
Well, you can't because you have an iPhone.
Oh, darn.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
so I just gotta wait.
Yeah, tell all your friends that have an Android, download Google Messages because you're able to transmit.
I don't have a lot of friends.
Well, make some friends.
You're my friend, Peyton.
Oh, well, thank you. Are you going to tell me?
Yeah, you could download it on your phone.
Okay. All right, I will. I'll do that. I'll do that as soon as this is
Well, I think this is a very interesting topic we're having today because it's like so what I think is important versus what what's important to you is that we're taking something, we're breaking it apart and putting it back together because it really is something that needs to be said.
Yeah, exactly.
Because those little things really add up to bigger topics.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. It's the importance. I mean, so the nerd community has a lot to offer the world, but it's difficult for us to get our message across because a lot of what we do is not actually important to the average person. It's like my mom does not really care that much about some of this stuff. Like she has her phone and it works fine, which is cool.
But that's all she cares about.
But that's all she cares about. She doesn't care that there's this disconnect of.
She's not connected to Mr. Rogers who used to go through and tell you how things work.
Yeah,
that's how you learn stuff, right?
Exactly.
Back in the day, you could watch the film and you're like, wow, how did they make that?
Right.
And now it's like we've got these devices in our hands and we're just like they're just working for us. And so as long as they're working, we don't care how it's done.
Exactly. And so obviously, if my mom were to just read these articles about people are complaining about green bubbles, it's like, well, that's kind of dumb. But if they actually understood the implications behind it, more security, more data to be able to be transferred, just a better messaging experience overall, Apple is not going to change anything until there's backlash.
Do you think Google's going to bully Apple enough to do it?
I have no idea. That's the thing.
Stay tuned.
Right. It's all about... I think Apple only really makes changes whenever people are actually upset. I mean, because if their own users are
so how do you make
totally
noise?
contempt,
that's what I want to know.
Well, the only way to do it is to let people know and to inform people that have iPhones of the issue because it affects them too. It affects them too. I mean, you talk to somebody that has an iPhone and they always mention the green bubbles whenever you're in a group chat. Because a group chat with an iPhone is great when everybody has an iPhone. But whenever just another Android person comes in, it breaks the whole thing because Apple refuses to acknowledge the existence of this communication standard that the whole world is adopting.
So the nerd just walks in the room and everybody stares at him.
Exactly. Yeah, it's the equivalent of that because the whole vibe of the room is broken down.
You're such a nerd.
I am such a nerd.
So, well, I love this podcast. I think it's a great... I honestly love the fact that we're talking about something that's really, truly important, right? But silly at the same time, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I think it's great.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you having me on, and I think we got some cool topics coming up, so it'll be nice.
Thank you. Yeah. I appreciate you making me your co-host today.
Absolutely, it was my pleasure. Thank you, everybody, for listening. This was DeNiche. Big thanks to Carla for coming on the show. I always love having her input and perspective. If today's topic interests you, please feel free to reach out to me at productions@dbcwebdesigns.com. I also have a LinkedIn and Instagram. I'd love to hear your thoughts.